Hi everyone, I'm Mercedes with Rocky Nook. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar with Valerie Jardin on virtual street photography. This webinar is inspired by her latest book, Street Photography Assignments. If you haven't already picked up that book, it's actually currently on pre-order. The ebook is available now, but if you want to pre-order it from the Rocky Nook website, we have sent out a coupon. It should have been in your registration email from this, so that you can purchase that book with 40% off. And if you pre-order it now, you'll get the ebook right away. If you buy the bundle version, you'll get the ebook right away, and then the print version will be shipped to you once it becomes available. If you order only the print version, that will ship when it's available, and if you order only the ebook version, that will ship to you immediately. That will be sent right to your email. I just want to let you all know that we will be sending an email tomorrow with this video as a replay, so you can watch it again at your convenience if you miss anything or if you want to go over something. You'll be able to see that again tomorrow. That'll also include a link to Valerie's book and the coupon code. Additionally, if you enjoyed the book, if you've already had it, if you've read it before, if you are currently reading it and you enjoyed it and found it helpful, a review of the book on Amazon or on the Rocky Nook website is really helpful to both us and to Valerie. So if you can do that, that would be greatly appreciated. So I will go ahead and we'll just get right to it and get started with Valerie. Go ahead and submit your questions as you have them, and Valerie will answer them during the presentation. Hi, Valerie. Thank you for joining us.
Bonjour, everyone. Nice to see so many familiar names and old friends, new friends. So welcome. So this is the chat room. There is also the Q&A box. So I'm going to open that as well. So should I wait a couple more minutes? 163 people in the room, so that's really good, and many more who will watch it later on. So I think I'll just get started and do the screen share. I have so today I have a presentation for you. It's a bit of a virtual photo walk, but what I thought I'd do, the 75 assignments that are in the book, with some of the pictures that are included in the book and some other ones to illustrate a point. So it will be just like reading one assignment, one chapter of the book, except that I will be talking instead of you reading. So, and hopefully this will make you want to go out and hit the streets and read the other 72 included in the e-version, and coming later this year, the print version. So, so let me do the screen share right here. Okay. So now I can only see the Q&A. I cannot see the chat room anymore. So if you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A. I will take a little break between each assignment and answer some relevant questions about each assignment. And then after I'm done with all three, we'll have plenty of time for more questions, and a social time. You can ask questions about anything you want, and I'll try to answer them. So let's get started. So a few words about me for those of you who don't know me yet. I'm a French photographer. I was born in Normandy, which is a couple of hours northwest of Paris, and I'm currently living in Minneapolis. I think everybody can put Minneapolis on a map now, unfortunately. But about me, I'm an educator, author, speaker, podcaster, among other things. Basically, I live and breathe in pixels. I'm self-taught, and after working for clients for quite a few years, I quit my commercial photography business and started teaching workshops, and that was almost 10 years ago. And my first workshops was actually an all-inclusive 1 week long adventure in Paris. And when I'm saying all-inclusive, it was all-inclusive. I took care of everything. So I wore many hats between, teaching. I was, I took care of everybody restaurants reservations and hotels and everything. And it was very successful because the following year I ran 9 workshops, and ever since then I've been running at least 12 on average, half of them being more than half being in Europe. But they're a lot more flexible now because I realize not everyone wants to have dinner with everyone else every single night. So I learned a lot, and a lot of I see a lot of my students actually are in the room. I've made many friends, and those friends again together. Some people have been on up to 9-10 workshops in the past a few years. So it's really I could not. I can't even think of doing anything I would love more. So you can imagine how difficult it is now, because I was teaching in Lisbon when we went into lockdown, and now I'm not starting again until April 2021. So, but this is okay. Time gave me plenty of time to write books. So my workshops bring me to places such as Normandy, Paris, Rome, Berlin, Melbourne, London, and then around the US, New York, San Francisco, Minneapolis, which is home base, and many other places. My philosophy on the street is 100% candid. I never stage a moment. I never ask anyone to do something again because I missed the moment. No, it's 100% candid. I don't remove anything from my pictures. I shoot with the little camera that you see on the picture here, which is a fixed focal length rangefinder camera, 23 millimeter, a Fujifilm X100. This one is the V, number 5. It's quiet. It's an extension of me. So it's a wide angle lens, but I am not an in-your-face photographer at all. Respect is my number 1 priority on the street. And I never photograph people in vulnerable situations, moments of crisis, of ridicule. So it's all about photographing the beauty of everyday life. And those are moments that have never happened and will never happen again. So I think that is why street photography is so addicting and so difficult. I'm also an official Fujifilm photographer, an ambassador for Fujifilm USA, and definitely a gear minimalist, because I really believe in the power of limitations. 1 camera, 1 lens. Even when I was shooting with a DSLR, I never carried another lens with me. The one that was on the camera is all I worried about. So now I don't even have the option of changing, and so I don't have the option of changing lens. So it's even better. So let's start with the first assignment, which is not the first assignment in the book. I picked 3 random assignments, and it's about the correct stepping motion. That's one mistake that I see so often on the street, is people capture a beautiful subject in a beautiful setting, and then the subject has 1 leg bent, and it looks like they're, like of a flamingo. They're on 1 leg. It looks very awkward. So to illustrate this, so the book, basically each assignment, if you haven't seen the book yet, each assignment has assignment and technique and then some samples. So this is assignment 18, and these are screenshots to show you what the book looks like, whether you have a print version, and I have a advanced copy here, but you won't be able to get it for a few more weeks, or the version. Look at this. You may think that's a pretty cool picture, beautiful setting. This is definitely a street photographer's playground. Colonne de Buren at Palais Royal in Paris. I bring my students there every workshop and give them assignments and mentor them on location on the streets, and usually that place is quite busy. So to find it when it's that empty, it's very rare. And then to find such a phenomenal subject coming, walking across when there are no kids playing on the columns or anything, is quite a rare thing. So You'd think, well, pretty cool, black and white stripe. The gentleman is elegant, definitely a local Parisian, wearing black and white, good setting. But look how awkward that stepping motion is. It's awful. It totally ruins the shot. And when you look at this, which is the second shot, the second step after the first shot I showed you, look how much more dynamic it is. Let's go back. Look at this. If you only saw this picture, some of you may have thought, hey, that's pretty cool. But then look at this, how much better this looks, that dynamic stepping. So that's something you can certainly put in burst mode. This was in a burst. That's why I could show you those two pictures. If it's in an amazing location like this, and you know you're not going to come back next week or next year, well, yeah, put in burst mode. But it's really not that difficult to capture the dynamic stepping in one frame. And I definitely encourage you to practice that in your own city, anywhere. You can certainly watch people coming and start counting like 1, 2, step, 1, 2, step, and then just click on the stepping. Sometimes you'll even have a little bit of space between the heel and the ground. It's awesome. You can't plan that, but sometimes that happens, and it's just, it makes the shot even better. So you can certainly get this in one shot. I usually do it in one shot unless I'm in a location where the light is so good and I really cannot miss the shot. Then of course I'll go into burst. The satisfaction, however, is not quite the same. You'll tell me no one knows and no one cares. That's true, but you're the one person you need to please with your photography. You're the number one person you need to please with your photography. And for me, if I capture the moment in one frame, I'm much happier than if I got it in a burst, because the merit is definitely, there is more merit in it than capturing it in a burst. Then, you know, it's pretty easy at that point. But you still have to, in a burst, you still have to recognize which one is the strongest shot. When the person is coming towards you, then the stepping should look very elegant, kind of a V shape. Look at the woman in the her reflection on each side, but the woman coming towards you, look how elegant it is because you have the V shape. So if she was on the side, it would be the exact same dynamic stepping. But here you don't really want separation in the way she looks forward. It would also look awkward. So again, you can certainly control one subject, but you can't control two. They may not be in sync. This was actually a one frame shot in Rome. I was sitting with a friend on a workshop. We were having pizza, I remember clearly, and it was delicious. And as photographers, whether it's on workshop or just photographers hanging out together, the camera is, and you know that because you're all photographers watching this, the camera is always on the table. The lens cap is never on the camera anytime. Actually, leave it at home, and the camera is always on. And as photographers, we'll talk to each other and we'll listen to each other, but while we're doing that, we're kind of scanning around us to see if we're not missing a shot. That's why it's so amazing. That's why I started workshops, actually, because I wanted to be able to do that and not be rude. So when we're, you know, a group of 8 to 10 photographers, we can do that all day long for a weekend or an entire week, and nobody cares, nobody gets offended because we all have the same mission. So this was one of those moments, and I saw this gentleman, and I mean, look how handsome they are. Father and son dressed the same and in step. So if one had been off step, I probably would have never showed that picture, or I would have showed it to you as a fail. You know, this really wasn't. But here they were both in step, and I caught them in that dynamic stepping, and that makes for a very strong photograph. This one in New York, the woman who was going against the flow, beautiful woman. This was on Broadway, and look at the little bit of separation between the heel of a boot and the pavement. That little separation, when you can catch that, it's like it's the cherry on the cake. But look how everybody else is in step as well. That you cannot control. My goal was getting this woman in step. And then serendipity did the rest. And the contrast between this amazingly beautiful, colorful woman with the blue hair going against the flow of everybody else and going against the leading line of the building, and then the woman coming into the frame who's wearing all black in contrast and also stepping into the frame. So here, all these stepping in sync really make for a stronger photograph. There are a lot of other elements that help this pictures, but it's really still about the subject and the quality of the subject. Same when you're photographing dancers, the way they're stepping is going to be very, very important and is going to make or break the picture. So getting the elegant step. When you're photographing dancers, and this is in Paris at Mouffetard, it's really important to go into burst mode, unless you know the dance really well, but dancers, are beautiful they are when you freeze the right motion, can look really, really, really awkward if you miss that motion. So again, the importance of stepping, it's one thing that you can practice every day, and it will really make a difference. When I do one-on-one critiques, whether it's live on workshops or online, often, you know, when it's a first critique with a student, I see the stepping is always awkward. It's kind of like cutting feet. You know, people do it consistently, and then until you show them, like, hey, you're cutting the feet, or you're cutting hands. When people realize that this is a consistent thing, they're not paying attention to the way the subject steps, then the situation, that they can correct it and be more careful. But that also takes practice. So you have to see it, and then you have to practice it. Before I go to the next assignment, I'll look at if we have any questions that are relevant. Do you ask someone? Oh, absolutely. I never ask people if I photograph them. They don't know that I photograph them. I'm quite invisible. That's a technique that I teach, how to make yourself invisible, even when you shoot with a wide angle. So nowadays we have smaller cameras that are very inconspicuous and they're quiet. You don't even need to bring them to your eye. So it's pretty easy to be invisible today. Before I switched to a smaller camera and I was still shooting with the DSLR, it was a little bit more difficult, you know, having this huge camera in front of your face. But I was still shooting close to people, and no, if you ask people, then the moment would be gone. There would be no picture, because what catches your eye is completely candid. You remove the candid aspect of it, then there is no picture left. So if you asked everyone if they could photograph them, then the moment, then there would be no picture. Workshop in New Orleans, maybe someday. I'm going to focus on Europe for the next few months though. Let's see, can you give distance from subject? Well, I'm shooting the equivalent of 35 millimeters, so I can be literally over the subject's shoulder at times, and just having the side of their face as if I'm looking through their eyes. So I can be very close. It all depends. Sometimes I'm a lot more minimalist, but again, I shoot with one focal length, which is 35 equivalent on a full frame sensor. How do you shoot vertical if camera is on the table? I don't put a camera on the table vertically. I handhold all the time. The only time I would put a camera on a surface is if I'm doing a slow shutter speed and I need to use the 2-second timer. So let's see, right or left foot forward, doesn't matter, Elaine. Stephen is asking a question about the man and the boy in Italy. Cropping, I'm not a cropper. Again, I shoot JPEG. I make the decision, and that's for another presentation, but real quick. I shoot JPEG. I make the decision of color or black and white in camera. I do not remove anything from the frame. I spend under 5 seconds per picture in Lightroom. I bring my pictures into Lightroom because I love the catalog. I spend less than 5 seconds. Did I say minutes? That would be a really long time. 5 seconds on every picture. I don't crop to get closer. I move myself closer. If I need to crop anything, it's to straighten a vertical, for example. So that's pretty much the extent of my cropping, unless really there was something that prevented me from getting closer, and there is something that needs to be removed by cropping the subject a little bit closer. Okay. Let's get to the second exercise. And if I don't answer all those questions right here, I will get back to them later on. Otherwise, I'm just going to be answering questions for the next hour. And I have plenty of time after. Assignment number 41, looking in. What I mean by looking in is actually photographing people through windows, and I love it, and I love the reflections. Whenever I see an interesting subject at a cafe or a restaurant, or it could be even through the glass of a bus stop, pretty much shooting through a window, looking in. There is also an exercise that's looking out, so I'm really focusing on looking in. So reflections are wonderful. People often ask me, do you use a filter? It's like, no. Reflections are amazing. If you're a street photographer, you don't worry about this kind of thing. Those little imperfections and what probably landscape photographers or would probably, or cityscape photographers that really don't want to have people in their frame would probably try to prevent, the street photographer will completely embrace. And those little imperfections, so-called imperfections, are what make the photograph even more special. It adds to the mood, the reality of things. Again, these are moments of everyday life, untouched, literally. So it's the reflections are amazing. The first picture here, well, I'll go through them when you see them enlarged. But so when you're on the street, like you see someone like this, so of course you don't want to make a sudden stop because I'm really close. I'm at 23. I'm pretty much, I can extend my hand and I'm touching the glass. So I'm really close. From an angle, you don't have your own reflection in the glass, so that's usually my approach. If I have to get really close, and if I'm wearing black, which I am wearing black clothes, then your reflection it's going to be less. So that's one trick. Never wear bright white clothes. Your reflection will really stand out even more. But if you shoot from an angle, you won't have your reflection in the shot. So when I see someone like that, I approach it very slowly, but I don't stop either. You cannot stop. The minute you stop, the person will look up and notice you, and then you have no picture. I didn't want to make eye contact. Sometimes you make eye contact with the subject, and that's okay. If it's completely spontaneous, I would never provoke it. I find that rude, and I don't like those pictures. But sometimes the subject makes eye contact, and that's not eye contact that really makes the photograph strong. But here, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to photograph this gentleman as he was paging through a magazine. So I walk very slowly. I know my focal length, that the importance of shooting with a fixed focal length, that you don't even have to look at not to look through the viewfinder or even the LCD, because you know exactly what that lens is going to do for you. It's an extension of your vision. So you just walk by, barely pause, grab the shot, and keep on going. That way, he never knew I photographed him. I never changed the moment that I saw. It's all about capturing the moment without, it's not sneaky. A lot of people say, oh, it's really sneaky. It's not sneaky. The only reason you don't want to be seen is so that if they notice you, they will stop doing whatever caught your attention in the first place. So then you missed the shot. So, and then you keep on going. And so getting it from that angle, making sure you don't have major distractions on their face. Like if I had a car, you know, reflection of a car on his face, that would ruin the shot. But all the other reflections, we have bicycles, which I love. Whenever there are things like that, if it's too many cars, then, you know, try to move yourself a little bit. And then also leave some of the window frame in the shot so that we know you're shooting through a window. Trying to get so much closer, like here picture, I had just cropped him as a vertical shot, just him. It would make no sense. They would not be we would know what it shot through. Here we have a sense of the place, and we have some negative space behind him. That is all. Those are all decisions I made when I made that composition and shot it. And this is the shot. I added a little bit of clarity and a slight vignette. That's it. If necessary, again, straighten the verticals, especially with a wide angle. Your verticals, you know, there's going to be a little bit of distortion. So that's the one thing that I will do is make sure my verticals are straight, because anything that's slightly off will be really distracting. If it's really dynamic and tilt like you mean it, then it's fine. But if it's slightly off and you can straighten the vertical, do that. This actually picture won an award and was exhibited in Paris 2 summers ago, I believe. This is shot through 3 panels of glass, actually, but it's that filter of all the glass panels that make this photograph interesting. Besides the fact that it's a successful silhouette, we have good definition of the woman's face, the nose, the mouth. I waited for her hand to be down. You don't photograph people while they're eating either. So here she was pausing. Our face was visible, although she's in a silhouette form. And it worked. But it's all those little imperfections, the paper or the napkin on the ground and the signage on the door. This is what makes this photograph moody, and I love that. This is shot through a car window, a little boy that was at a car show. And again, shooting through window, you will have that filter and those reflections, but that really makes the photograph special. We want that. We want the elements out of focus in the foreground as well, and all these things help frame the picture. Sometimes you have surprises when you shoot through windows. You have reflections, and here I even have a reflection of someone who I can't see, who's behind me. The gentleman is actually looking because he's wondering when I'm photographing. And so when he saw me point the camera, he didn't realize I was photographing in his direction. He thought I was photographing past him. And as he turned, a person who was walking behind me is reflecting in the other surface. It looks like he's looking at himself, but those are 2 different people. So reflections can really, really make some interesting things visually. So sometimes you have things that you don't even see in your camera when you take the shot that you notice after that can add another layer to your photograph. So that's really, really cool. Let me see if I have any questions about reflections before we go to the third and final exercise. Do you need permission to use these photos in a competition? No, because they're not used for commercial. They're not commercial use. They are, my pictures are only used for fine art and editorial. Let's see. Doesn't matter how tall you are, Roy. You say you're 6 feet 2 inches tall and shoot with a Nikon. Just don't bring the camera to your face. And if you cannot be invisible, just be completely open. You know, street photography is not something you shoot behind a long lens. Absolutely not. Then that is very sneaky, and you don't even get that same feel. You know, street photography is something you shoot quite close. Doesn't have to be a wide angle either. You can certainly shoot at 50 millimeter if that's your if that's a focal length that's good for you, but don't Don't hide behind a long lens, and then be quick. It's really about being quick. You have one shot capturing that moment. So um, even if you're tall, it makes no difference. And I've had students that have been very successful, who were taller than this even, and be very successful in getting the shots without being noticed. Again, it's about getting the candid shots, and the reason why you want to be invisible or very discreet is so that you get the shot before the subject ever sees you, and most of the time they would never notice you. In this photo, the umbrella is cut off. I'm not sure, it must not be this photo. I'm not sure which one. Oh, probably the one before. So, it's not about perfection, Linda, because you're photographing life on the street. Things happen really, really, really fast. And you can't be, when you do street photography, you're going to have to let go of a lot of your preconception. I'm not sure if that's the correct word in English. Preconceived ideas about composition. Things that are too perfect are probably staged. And so again, it's everyday life. So you do not control a lot of things. If you are going to, you control your gear, and you control your vision. That's all. You don't control what people are doing. So you have to let go of that and get the strongest possible shot in a fraction of a second. That will never happen again. It's like there's no coming back. So rarely will all the elements come together, such as perfect subject, perfect background, perfect light. Those are rare moments. They happen rarely in a lifetime even. So you're gonna have to let go of a lot of that, or you'll be a very miserable street photographer because you can't control a lot of things. Doug asked if I shoot every day. Pretty much, not always street. If I'm not out on the street, but yes, I shoot every day. I do a lot of still life and contemplative photography. And what do you do in post-processing? Hardly anything. I shoot JPEG because with my camera, shooting RAW would make absolutely no sense. I could not replicate the acros that I can get in camera. I would have to shoot RAW and then convert in camera to get exactly what I want. So I make the decisions in camera. And I really do believe that making those decisions in camera make you a better photographer. Making decisions in post-processing doesn't make you a better photographer. And again, that's for another conversation, but making as many decisions, even if you shoot RAW, you should always know if it's going to be color or black and white. That is not a decision you leave for post-processing. That is a decision you make creatively before you press the shutter. So there's nothing wrong with shooting RAW, and I shoot RAW for many years. The reason I don't is because the film simulation that my camera gets me, Adobe cannot give me. So this is street photography. I'm not going to change things. I'm not going to clone. I'm not going to change skies or anything. So if it doesn't look right coming out of the camera, there's nothing you can do in post-processing that's going to make it look better. So when I get into Lightroom, I tweak exposure if necessary. Rarely, because I use my exposure compensation dial a lot during the day because I want to keep my shadows really deep, and I don't care about blowing out highlights on street photography. Those are decisions you make. Those are creative decisions. So blowing out highlights are usually something you want to do. I add a slight vignette and sometimes a little bit of clarity depending on the subject. So that's pretty much it. When I say 5 seconds or under, I mean 5 seconds or under, sometimes nothing at all. So very, very minimal. I do not use electronic shutter ever. I use mechanical shutter because this camera is completely silent. It's a leaf shutter in the lens, so I can't even hear it. So but I don't use electronic shutter because you can get that banding, and I don't want to have to worry about that when I go inside and shoot inside a building. And depending on the light, if you have fluorescent light, I think they call them, you can really have that awful banding. And so I always use mechanical shutter. Okay, let's move to panning. Last assignment for today. Maybe that will make you want to go and hit the streets. So panning, the technique actually get some getting used to. I always tell my students, first of all, if you're in RAW, get out of RAW because it's going to bog down your camera and slow it down. So go into JPEG only. And then if we're photographing scooters or bicyclists, I think it's start 1/30th of a second. That usually is a good place to go. Let the camera do everything else. Go into shutter priority, 1/30th. And then start locking, go into focus tracking and burst mode, preferably, although you can pan on a single shot too, but go into burst mode and then follow your subject. Start tracking your subject and follow them as soon as you can lock on them. You're not going to want that first picture, but that gives you a very smooth rotation, and then you keep going until they're gone. Only 1 or 2 pictures will possibly turn out, but you'll have a whole series. So don't just keep your finger on the trigger, just shoot. Ideally, you position yourself in ending position so you actually unwind yourself. So if you're photographing people that are coming from left to right, your body is turned to the right, and then you unwind yourself. It's a lot smoother that way. And then you have the technique down. That said, that is the easy part. The technique is always the easy part. Now you have to find a good subject, because a tack sharp panning shot of a boring subject is going to be a boring picture. So it's all about the subject. And I can't stress that enough, because I see really great pictures, really great panning technique of really, really boring subject. I'm like, yeah, the technique is down, but the picture is super boring. So when you see people like this, high heels on a scooter, that's a good subject. This was in Paris. I was shooting with the X70, which I was beta testing at the time. Well, that's a little bit wider even. And at the time, this was the only camera I had ever used that had a flip screen. So I was kind of like a kid playing with a new toy. This was in Amsterdam. That's a really good place to do panning, because you have a constant stream of people on bicycles and people who don't wear helmets, which was so much more elegant than people wearing a helmet. This is a much more beautiful subject, and I'd much rather have hair in the wind and really that elegant subject than somebody on a mountain bike with a helmet. Then those are good for practicing the technique, but it's not going to be a keeper at the end of the day unless you're photographing a race or something. So you want to photograph, you photograph an emotion. That's really what you have to think of. You photograph an emotion. Here the subject made eye contact with good, the face is sharp, but I don't even care about that so much, and I'll tell you why later. It could be a kid on a scooter. This was in Paris. So again, it's about the subject. The background has to be can't be too busy so that it distracts from the subject. So always look at enough contrast between the subject and the background, so the subject really stands out. But look here, for example, the first one is a technically good panning shot of a guy on a bicycle. There's nothing there besides the fact that the panning technique was done right. But it wasn't a race. I wasn't photographing a race. It wasn't, it's just playing with panning techniques. I think I was actually working with students that day, and we were practicing the technique. So when we practice the technique, I said, you practice on anything that moves. Then you only shoot interesting subject. then look at the second picture, completely failed. Completely failed. This is panning gone bad. But I love that picture. And that remains one of my favorite panning shot ever because it has mystery, it's elegant, and it's an emotion. It has everything that works in street photography. Yet it's failed. The technique failed, but it may be because of that that it's a beautiful shot. And had she been sharp, might not have worked any better. So this is what I mean by, just leave the technical thing behind when you out on the street. Focus on emotion and finding the truly interesting subject. And this was in Paris and looks Parisian. And I just love that how she's just holding the handlebar with one hand, sitting really nice and straight. There's something really special about this photograph, which was a technical fail. So I think this was it. I hope some of you join me on a workshop sometime, and we can practice all those techniques during on the streets of the world. And also, I invite you to listen to my biweekly podcast. I think I'm publishing episode 172 or 3 next week. Every other Thursday, Hit the Streets, which is how the the title of the book also came about. 75 reasons to hit the streets and learn. So I hope you do join, you take a listen to the podcast if you enjoy my way of teaching, and then keep in touch. I have classes online. This book number 12, which I'm quite proud of because I've wanted to write this book for a long time. This was actually originally the thought behind this, and you probably have read that I think I wrote that in the beginning of the book. Originally, my thought, yes, in the introduction, my thought was to make it a deck of cards that you could pull one card out and say, oh, this is the exercise I'll do today. And then I thought, well, it's probably not a format that would work that well. But then that's why I think it's nice if people have both the hard copy for at home where they can put post-it notes. I think that's a book that people are going to go back to often. And then you can have an e-version on your phone, and you're out on the street and you're kind of in a rut, like, oh, I don't know today what I'm going to do. And then you pick one exercise. And then 2, you can come back to it. Let me see, I'm going to stop share and then, okay. No, you should see me. I don't know if you can see me. So now you can apply, you can do one technique and then work at it, and then 6 months later you can go back to that exercise and see how much better you do next time. So it's not like you have 75 days of exercises and you're done. I think you can certainly go back, and it's really for all levels. You could be a brand new street photographer, or maybe you did that, you've been doing that for 20 years. It doesn't matter. There's something in there that you will enjoy and learn. And also towards the end, we work on themes, and that can be fun too, especially today when we need that extra push to get out on the street. So I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you enjoyed this short presentation. We still have time to answer questions. So now, do you get photo release after the photo is taken? No, again, I do not communicate with the people unless they come to me and they want to tell me. Then I'm very happy to talk to them. I'm not doing anything wrong. So if they come to me and say, did you just take my picture? I said, yes, this was a beautiful moment. Look at the light, look at the backdrop, look at the way you're dressed, look how beautiful you are. Yes, I'll tell them what I'm doing, no problem. But usually it's a fraction of a second and then I'm already moved on. So the people that I photograph are not photographing in an embarrassing or vulnerable situation. So really is no need to ask for a release after. Would you sign a release on the street? I wouldn't. So they're on public property. I can photograph them, and again, it's only time I have interaction with people, and that's another exercise in the book, is if I do street portraits, where actually I have I make at least eye contact, person knows I'm photographing them, or I even have a conversation with the subject, and that's totally fine. I do I do I do not mind. I love people. So for me, it's actually, if I start interacting with people because I find them interesting, I'll often forget to take a picture. I'll have a conversation, we'll talk for 20 minutes, and then I'll leave thinking, oh yeah, the reason why I wanted to photograph them, and then I got so caught up in the moment that I forget to take the picture. Let's see. Do you shoot black and white, or no? Yes, I make those decisions. So with this camera, my black and whites are Acros yellow filter, and my colors classic chrome. Do you use autofocus or manual focusing? I use autofocus 99% of the time. Not use zone focus, which is another way to shoot street photography. Zone focus will definitely save a lot of shots. I just never like to zone focus, so I don't use it. What do you, hold on, it's moving. Now I can't see it. Oh, how do you react when you take a picture of people and they look at you afterwards? Approval from anonymous attendee. I don't. Doesn't matter if they come to me, I'll talk to them, and I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm actually doing something really important when you think of it. Documenting a moment in time. If photographers don't do that and do it well and respectfully, all we will have of the past 10 years are selfies of people and surveillance footage. So that would be a shame. I mean, look at the value of photographs from, even 100 years ago. And now the photographs we just found of Vivian Maier a few years, maybe 10 years ago, the wealth of information we get from those candid moments on the streets of Chicago mainly, and then wherever she traveled. It's so important to go back and look at those pictures. So the historical value of the photographs that we shoot on the streets, I think, is there. So that's why I take one seriously, and that's why I teach people to do it so respectfully, because there are so many street photographers that are disrespectful and in your face. Like, if everybody did it that way, that would be the death of street photography, and that would be a shame, because it's everyday life is so beautiful. So we have to do it well. We have to do it respectfully. Let's see. Never used a prime lens. Well, Joyce, you probably have a zoom lens that's like your travel lens, for example. So just because it's a zoom lens doesn't mean you have to zoom it. So put it at 35. Use it at 35 for a week. Don't touch it. And then put it at 50, use it at a week. And then try to see what the focal length feels right to you. That's really a decision that you have to make yourself. And so I never tell people to buy gear, experience. So whatever you have is gonna work. Use your phone, phone. It's a perfect imitation, and that's the future of photography, whether we like it or not. So it doesn't matter. Just use your zoom and then set it at one focal length. I would start start at 50 and then go wider. Probably start that way, so you're not so close right away. So start at 50 and then go to 35, and then and then get a little bit wider. Who knows? You may be a wide angle shooter. What else? Mike, do you use RAW or JPEG? JPEG. I haven't shot a RAW file in about 7 or 8 years now. Ever since I switched to Fujifilm. I shot RAW when I was shooting Canon. I don't use plugins. I only use like 3 sliders on in Lightroom. Oh, okay. Do you focus manually, autofocus? I autofocus. The autofocus of my camera is so good, I trust it. Let's see. A lot of questions I've answered for other people before. You often use f4. Yes. Well, when you consider that this is a crop sensor, so 5.6, everything is in focus. The only time you'd have to go to a smaller aperture, bigger number, is if you do a sunburst effect. We'd be at f16, but you never have to be any smaller than 5.6 to get things in focus. So f4 is pretty good. If I'm inside, I'm at f2 immediately. And I never worry about the ISO. I never denoise anything. I love the noise actually on my black and white. When I'm indoors or low light, I'm always in black and white anyways. And the JPEG out with, it's not noise. It looks like grain, and it's beautiful. So I embrace the ISO and worry about the ISO. David, I don't convert to black and white. I shoot in black and white. This was Acros with yellow filter. Usually I push the highlights up one, shadows too. I like to have real contrasty. So those are all decisions you make in camera, so that, I mean, if you could in camera and never spend time in post-processing, wouldn't that be better? You know, so unless you love post-processing, and a lot of people do, and that's totally fine. I hate it. The less time I spend, I don't even take that many pictures for that reason. When I'm out on the street, I'll probably shoot 30 frames in a day, and I'm totally fine with that. I press the shutter when I know it's going to be a keeper. It may not be, but at least it has potential of being a keeper. I don't, you know, I mess up a lot of shots, but at least I don't have I'd hate that. So it's really about being a more intentional photographer. You can definitely go back to you can certainly go back to the film days without shooting film. But when we shot film, we were a lot more deliberate. Every shutter click was had a $ attached to it. And so we were not, you know, we didn't do the spray and pray approach, and we had a much higher rate of keepers. So you can certainly do that with a digital camera, and that size is also in the book. I use, if I use center focus, yes, I use center focus, and I either lock and recompose, or I use the joystick if the subject is not moving. It's spontaneity. Nothing stage shoot from the hip. Yes, I think things kind of, the way I shoot kind of reflects my personality. I'm very spontaneous and authentic, and my photographs are completely authentic and very spontaneous shooter. So yes, and again, you don't have time. There are a lot of decisions. Like there are hundreds of decisions that come in a fraction of a second, but that you get from shooting a lot. You know, you'll have you'll see the light. Maybe you can do a star effect, and then you'll have leading lines and repeated patterns. All these are not things that you're going to think of. It becomes the way you see. And when you start seeing photographs, which is another book I wrote, you start seeing photographically, you will be a faster, you'll be faster on the street, and you'll get more shots because you can react so much faster. So it's not about being fast, physically fast, it's about making decisions in fractions of seconds, but because that's all you have. Doug, the best way to start is to start with assignment number 1 if you're really shy, and then work your way down there. So if you're really new and shy at street photography, I would recommend, you know, following the book one chapter at a time, and you know, photograph street performers even. They count. How do you attain focus? Well, I trust my camera. I let my camera do quite a bit of the work because it's not about your, I mean, you have to know your gear, you have to be a good technical photographer, but that has to become second nature. It's about seeing. I often see new photographers on workshops that are not hung up on technical things, that see better and make better photograph on the street because they don't have all those preconceived compositional ideas, and they're more daring and they're bolder, and they will make statements with going and make stronger photographs that way. So it's really your way of seeing that will make you a better photographer. The technical part, don't ever let the technical part worry you or stop you, because that it will always be the easiest part of whatever you do. It's really shooting with your heart, basically. That differentiates the visual storyteller from the average photographer. Let's see. ISO, Doug, I would say 6400. I really don't think I've ever shot at higher than that, but I'm at 400 a lot. I mean, I shoot in really, really dark places. Some of my projects, a recent project, Shop Local, is a lot of the pictures at 6 because there's hardly any light at all. I mean, either a tiny window or a tiny lamp. So I shoot at 6400 a lot when I need to be. I never worry about the ISO. I let it go from 6400. That's not something I will control. Okay, let's see. David is asking if I shoot in aperture, shutter. I shoot in aperture priority most of the time, unless I'm, like panning, things like that. But yes, aperture priority most of the time. You can achieve the same result. It's whatever is easier for you. And I have a camera that's all dials, so I can make all those adjustments without looking at the camera. I hate menu cameras. And here, everything I need is on a dial or a button. And I can do that without looking. And that's when you know you have the right camera for you. Yes, I could do the simulation of Fuji in Lightroom, but they're not the Fuji simulations. They're the renditions by Adobe. So they're slightly different. Not that you'll notice, they look pretty good, but why shoot RAW? There's really nothing you need. You don't need RAW for anything in street photography. A lot of people think that you shoot RAW for printing, which doesn't make sense because you don't print a RAW file, you print a JPEG. And there's nothing that's going to be better than the JPEG that comes out of that camera. So, and again, I'm not spending time on my pictures. I'm not changing. I'm not doing HDR. I'm not changing the sky. Of course, if I was doing that, I would probably shoot RAW. But I don't tell people you have to shoot RAW. People do whatever they want. But if they start shooting RAW plus JPEG, they probably will never look at the RAW files. And then they learn it's also, you have to be ready. You have to be ready to limitations, really make those decisions in camera, because you're not going to be able to work those files as much. So, but I think those limitations make better photographers. Again, the decisions you make in camera will definitely, a photographer, the decisions you make in post-processing are not going to make you a better photographer. Oh, Eleanor, you lost your photo mojo. You need to come back on a workshop next year. So yes, get the book, and yes, come back to Paris next year or London or somewhere. I know it's hard. It's hard for me too. I go out on the street, but nothing is the same. The streets are quite deserted. It's a bit bad. But you have to work with the limitation again, more limitations, so now you can photograph silhouettes and things like that. You're going to be a little bit further from people, so the book will probably get you out there. So pick some exercises that make you happy. It's all about making you happy. You don't have to please anybody else but yourself. Let's see. Oh, wow, there were all questions, and I don't know if our friends at Rocky Nook want to keep going, or maybe a lot of people have already tuned out. Oh, a lot of people stayed.
We still have some time. There's still a lot of people here, so if you want to keep answering questions, go ahead.
Okay. I could speak all day. You know me, Mercedes. I could be here all day. I could be here all afternoon. So
I do just want to say real quick, sorry, I should have mentioned this at the top, is we don't allow participants to speak. So I'm sorry to anyone who's raised their hand. I'm just going to lower your hand. So go ahead and just submit your question in the Q&A box so Valerie does see it. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, if I let 200 people speak, it would never work. So it's you European. I'm actually a French citizen. That's why I have no restriction about traveling between the U.S. and France, and I'm doing that. So thank you. And I really, yeah, it's not about I'm not a technical photographer, really. It's your soul, your heart and soul that you put into this, definitely. Charles asked if my technique changed if I use a zoom lens. I don't even own a zoom lens. Last zoom lens I used was probably 8 years ago. So no, I shoot, I have an X Pro 2, which has detachable lenses, but I usually keep it for my lens baby lenses, which are also prime type lenses, but they're creative manual focus lenses, and I love those. Those are so much fun when you're in a rut. I think there are exercises about that in the book too, how to use even the fun settings on your camera. A lot of people never use those double exposure just to get you out. There's so much you can do just with some of the fun settings that you have in your camera that people don't even look at. Let's see. Oh, it's Charles who wants me to come to Mexico. maybe soon. Thank you. Some of my favorite photographers, well, I grew up in France. I was very influenced by Bresson. I mean, I grew up with photographs from the fathers of street photography. Street photography was born in France, was born in Paris. So when you're a French teenager, those are the pictures you have on your wall. And so was I influenced by, well, some people tell me I definitely have a French aesthetic to my photographs, although I live in the US, but and maybe I was influenced somehow. I'm often, when I wouldn't say, I'm mostly influenced by life itself, and my photographs really reflect my mood. And people say they recognize my pictures right away, and that makes me happy. But a style is very fluid and changes with your life experiences and your technical expertise as well. But a style should never be static. So a style is fluid, and of course, a lot of I interview a lot of show whose work I admire, and that inspire me every day. I'm inspired by the work of my students. I see them grow year after year. It's just amazing. Stephen asks, given your style, you have to be really fast. You mentioned autofocus. How do you set focus on so quickly? Well, I use live view on my camera, but yes, sometimes you can't. Sometimes something will happen so fast that you won't the subject won't be in focus, but that's okay. That doesn't mean the picture is not beautiful. You know, sharpness is a bourgeois concept, as Cartier-Bresson once said. Focus doesn't mean anything, really. Again, a sharp, boring picture is still going to be a boring picture. So give me focus all day long. If there is soul in the photograph and emotion, that's what I'm going for. Do you recommend any tutorial for setting the X100V? Oh, well, there are a couple books about that, but you know, I'm sure I don't do gear reviews or anything, so I don't do those tutorials for Fujifilm because I'm just so not into gear. I just love my camera. But there are probably a lot of tutorials out there. I know there is a book. I think Rocky Nook published a book of the Fuji X100 series, so I would be surprised if the new one is out. So so check the Rocky Nook catalog. Sound of focus, yes. Oh, there are more questions also in the chat room. Great, thank you. Let me see. Auto ISO, yes, I shoot auto ISO. I let it do its thing. Just set the shutter speed at a minimum. Like if I don't want my shutter speed to go below 1/200th, but I don't care if the ISO goes from 160 to 200, I'll set that parameter in the option, unless I want to actually slow shutter speed and actually create motion, which there are plenty of exercises about motion in the book as well. So all those questions kind of are for different exercises, and I could, you know, talk about that all day. Do you use the yellow filter? Yes, I do. I like to keep it's more contrasty, so I do use the yellow filter setting in camera. Okay, wow, a lot of those questions have already answered. David is asking, when I use exposure compensation, when and how you use it. Well, for example, if you're shooting a silhouette, and there's plenty of explanation about silhouettes in the book, you could either go into spot metering. Ideally, that's what you do, but it's time to go into spot metering. It's not usually something that is click of a button. So when you see a silhouette, you don't have time to go into a menu. The shot is already gone. So that's when I use exposure compensation. So if I want my silhouette to stay dark and the shadows to stay nice and deep, I'll use exposure compensation down to keep that. I don't worry about blowing out highlights behind a silhouette. Sometimes I actually want to remove distractions. But or if you are photographing you're facing the light, so you want your subject to be exposed properly, then you would use exposure compensation up. So you would stop it up. So that's when I use exposure compensation. It's definitely that gets the most work out throughout the day, more so than the aperture ring. Fancy doing a film-based project over digital? I do have a really cool film camera, but I haven't had time. I'm so busy traveling, writing, speaking. I haven't had time to play with that camera too much. So maybe someday. Okay. Oh, there. Oh, Stacy. Thank you, Stacy, from Fujifilm. Just sent some tutorials for the X100V or any Fujifilm camera. So check the chat room and some of those videos there. I knew some people at Fuji had done something. They don't ask me because they know I would be really bad at this. When do the signups for Portland 2021 open? Hey, Ryan. No, you have to come back to Paris. You know that. But I'll come, it would be probably 2022 at that point. 2021, kind of let things kind of settle in the US first. Um, okay. Joanna, yes, the presentation will be available later. Our friends at Rocky Nook will send it tomorrow. I think you'll get the replay tomorrow. Okay, well, this was great. Lots of questions. I love this, and I did my best to answer as many as possible. Again, reach out to me. I don't always answer technical questions. Via email, and if there are too many of them, but I invite you to come and to come on some of my online classes that I do. I'm starting again once a month. I took the summer off teaching. So you get a lot of information there. It's a lot in the book. I mean, that book is really not technical. It's for everyone. So it's technical enough to get the job done. It will tell you, okay, so you want to do panning, this is what you need to do. And again, that's easy, get those settings and then practice. But then how are you going to get a good panning shot? Well, it's if you wait for a good subject. That's the key. That's where, you need to practice, and the technique itself, everyone can learn that. So the book, I hope, will serve as an inspiration to really think outside the technical aspect. You want your camera to become an extension of you. So people ask me all the time, what's the best camera for street photography? Well, for me, it's this one, but for you, it may be something that has a little bit more flexibility. This has quite a, limitations. You have to be able to live with one focal length forever. So it may not be for you. So really start with what you have and then go from there. If you really get hooked on street photography, well, then just don't go buy a DSLR. That would make absolutely no sense. I mean, I used one, but the day I sold it, that was a happy day. The day that I could just take this camera, the small camera in my hand, and use it all day long without even thinking of it. That's really when I stepped up my game. So use what you have, practice with what you have. You can even, you can do a lot of these assignments even with your phone, with whatever camera you have. Even if you only have zoom lenses, again, don't zoom, set it on one focal length for a week or two and see if that fits your style. And then if you really want to get into it, then yes, get a small camera, a silent camera, but go to a store and try some, because it really is to be something that fits right. For street photography, I really recommend that you stay away from menus. If you have to go into a menu every time you need to change something, you're going to miss all the shots. So definitely the camera will help you be a little faster once it becomes part of the way you see. So Mercedes, are you still here?
Yep. Thank you so much. That was so great. So many questions for you today. Thanks
I
for
know, I love
answering as many as you could. So I just want to remind everyone who's here that tomorrow we will send you a replay video of this webinar, so you can watch it again if you need to go back and see something. Also, if you haven't gotten Valerie's book yet, that email tomorrow will also have a coupon code, so you can take 40% off when you buy it from Rocky Nook. Unfortunately, that coupon code won't work anywhere else. It won't work at Amazon. It only works on Rocky Nook. And if you have already got the book and if you've enjoyed it, a review really helps us on Amazon, really helps Valerie, and we really appreciate hearing what you have to say about the books we publish. So
yes, please write reviews. It only takes a couple minutes. They don't have to be long.
yeah, and it helps other photographers too find out if this book has the information they're looking for and can guide them in the right way. So thank you so much for your time today, Valerie. This was great.
Thank you. Yeah, and hit the streets and have fun. It's
Absolutely.
about having fun, people, having fun.
Yes.
So.
And, you know, remember, you can take those street photography shots safely from 6 feet away. So
that's right. Plenty of those in there
right,
you can do.
the perfect socially distant activity that we can do right now.
That's right.
And thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will see you all again soon. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.